For a long time, Christian apologists have enjoyed playing pretend when it comes to what being an atheist entails. Not satisfied with the honest answer that atheism, what can be said to be the shared quality between all atheists, is merely an absence of theistic belief, they have attempted to change said definition. There's a big push by Christians and indeed all religious people to challenge that definition in hopes of shirking the burden of proof, which leads me on to our video today, coming from the South African channel Revolution Church Centurion. For your seemingly eternal torment in which hand-to-face contact is mandatory, I present to you Atheism, Part 1 in their current God series.
So, today, why is it so important to understand what atheists believe? Because the moment you step away from Christianity, guess what? You are stepping into something else. And if you are going to believe in atheism, if you want to commit and surrender your entire life to this belief system, I think it's so important to know what you believe. Because for me, I don't want to get to the end of my life as a Christian and never have inspected, researched Christianity as my faith if I come to the end of my life and I realize, man, this is rubbish. So for you, if you're thinking of following atheism, of believing in atheism, stepping away from Christianity, this is so important for you to understand what you actually believe.
Right. Well, how are you, a supposedly devout Christian, going to teach me, a living, breathing, thinking atheist, what it entails to be an atheist? Now, already off the bat, the big red buttons in the mind are blinking on and off, and your voice is being dulled by the ringing of a klaxon as you set out to assert that atheists subscribe to some sort of belief system by default of being an atheist. This, of course, is not true, and I can prove it by simply demonstrating two mutually exclusive non-theistic ideologies. So on one hand, I can present atheistic religions such as certain forms of Wicca, Buddhism, and of course Scientology, all of which center around the supernatural and thus qualify as religious beliefs. On the other hand, I can focus on secular philosophies such as humanism, which do not center around the supernatural, but rather center around topics such as science, education, ethics and meaning. But going beyond all of that, I can also bring forward the existence of uber or absolutist nihilism, i.e. literally the absence of belief in everything, thus showing that in moving away from one thing, you don't necessarily have to move towards another. Nihilism is only a term given to the absence of something, much like an absolute void. But what's important to take from this is that the only shared quality between atheists is the absence of theistic belief. So I guess my job is done. If only it were that simple.
So I'm going to share a few quick 3 or 4 points what atheists actually believe, according to Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins and those guys, so that you understand why you believe it. So atheism, to give you a quick definition of atheism. Atheism is a complex belief system that logically leads to some worrying conclusions. It's a logical belief system because it is a belief system. Doesn't mean you believe in God, but you still believe in other proponents. But there are some worrying conclusions that you need to keep in mind.
Well, before you move on to what you believe atheism is, could you perhaps explain why you've just misled your viewers? You clearly stated that you were going off the works of various known atheists, which, by the way, we do not view as an authority we must adhere to, but that fact is irrelevant as You lied pretty much immediately in quoting Andy Stanley's entirely dishonest definition of atheism. For those who don't know, Andy Stanley is an intellectual hack, aka religious apologist, who spends his time lying to other Christians about what atheists are like as damage control. This specific quote came from his talk, Who Needs God? Atheist 2.0. The title clearly attempting to cash in on the amazingly popular work of Elaine de Bolton's TED Talk, Atheist 2.0, which discusses why philosophies such as humanism are wonderful. Here is a clip from Andy Stanley's talk.
Bottom line is pretty much this. You cannot move away from something without moving toward something else. And the good news is this. The new atheists, Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, and others, the new atheists who've written all these books and all these articles, the new atheists have essentially updated us on atheism. They've updated atheism for the rest of us, thus Atheist 2.0. And what they remind us of, and what I want you to understand, and especially if you would consider yourself a nun, you would consider yourself one of those people, I grew up in it, I grew up with it, I just don't buy it, I'm tired of it, it seems irrelevant. Here's what I want you to understand, and here's what they would want you to understand. That atheism is not simply disbelief in God. Atheism is not simply, I don't believe in God anymore. Atheism is actually a complex belief system that logically leads to some unsettling conclusions. That atheism is actually, it's a belief system like anything else. And it is a complex belief system, just like Christianity, just like any other world religion. It's a complex belief system that logically leads to some unsettling conclusions.
I think it really says something to see just how little effort apologists are willing to spare to create an original presentation. All our South African friend did was cut out a few lines and change a few words. My fellow, if this were a university essay, you'd have been failed for plagiarism. But returning to the original point as made by Andy Stanley, as one of those people, you're talking absolute rubbish. I do not want you to lie and say that being an atheist is more than an absence of belief in God, the actual and only definition of an atheist that exists. And that's the thing. Andy, unlike our South African friend, was smart enough to give this as a live presentation to an already devout congregation who see no reason to check what he says. This means that even though the talk is now available online, he's already had a controlled effect on that live audience. Our South African friend, meanwhile, lacks said platform and therefore at best can hope to achieve an online audience, leaving them in the open.
Here are a few. Number one, if you're an atheist, and listen, just so we can get this right, today and next week is not about telling you this is right or this is wrong. This isn't even a defense for God or for Christianity in the next couple of weeks. This is purely just putting it out there so you understand what you believe and understand the worrying conclusions of your belief system.
Today is not an argument for Christianity. In fact, next week isn't either. Today is not an argument against atheism. It's not an argument for God. Today is just a Today is just a if you choose to give up religion, and if you choose especially to give up God entirely, then here is the alternative. And you owe it to yourself to know.
The arrogance in the idea that you're going to tell me what I and other atheists supposedly believe is just off the charts. I mean, Christianity is a system of belief, unlike atheism, and yet I still never claim to teach Christians what they believe. Instead, I may claim to teach them what the Bible says and hold that up against what they believe to demonstrate a clear contrast. But I never claim to tell them what they believe. What you're doing here is playing a game of false equivocation, literally trying to drag atheist and atheism down to the level of religion. It's entirely dishonest. And if you hadn't intended this as an attack on atheists, then you'd feel no compulsion to lie, which you clearly know you are doing as you have noted the actual definition of an atheist before simply brushing it aside on assertion alone. If you want to discuss ideologies, I'd be happy to have a conversation about the philosophy of humanism versus the religion of Christianity, as yes, my absence of theistic belief is not my singular trait. But that atheism is, and always will be, a simple absence of theistic belief until you supply evidence for God, at which moment I will pick up that theistic trait. That doesn't mean I'll worship said God, simply that I'd acknowledge their existence.
So the first thing that atheists believe is that there is actually no you. There's no consciousness. In other words, Christopher Hitchens, in his book Mortality, before he died, he was writing stuff about his life and writing down his journey. And he went to his doctor and he had cancer, and the doctor's like, Christopher, just keep on fighting. Just keep on, your body will get over this. And he eventually got upset. And he's like, listen, I don't have a body, I am a body. So there is no real you in atheism.
If there is no God, and perhaps there's not, if there is no God, and I don't know how to say it any other way, look up here, there's no you in there. There's no you.
So from Hitchens stating that he and the body are one, i.e., he does not exist as some separate entity, but exists as that entity, you, or more accurately, Andy Stanley, have decided to dishonestly change that statement into, I don't exist. Already you've caught yourself out in a direct lie. This can't be ignorance of the actual position, which was just read out by you. You know what they say, and you know how it's different to what you declared. So what's going on? What's the game here?
And I try to live out this worldview for a week, right? To try and see my wife only as a body, or only see my child as a body. See other people only merely as a body. See, in a world where everything is purely biology, physics, and chemistry, no one is special, everyone is just a body. Now, I promise you, try and treat your wife just as a body, guess what's going to happen? She's probably going to smack you in the face.
If your wife is prone to physically harming you, then I suggest seriously seeking help, though I believe you are simply using physical abuse for effect. There's nothing degrading about the fact that I and my consciousness, which is measurable, exist solely as a physical and purely naturalistic aspect of the universe. The only one degrading it here is you. I, meanwhile, look at it with intrigue, more so because I understand that we as people can work towards understanding and possibly even imitating that mind outside of the purely biological process of procreation. You simply sneering and saying that this is bad doesn't actually offer any weight to your argument about the way in which the atheist may view the topic of the mind, consciousness, and self. It's a straw man and nothing else. The fact is, my naturalistic view of consciousness isn't the only position an atheist may take. There are spiritual atheists out there who believe in some mystical forces such as the soul, whilst not believing in a deity. So the argument collapses on two fronts: the fact that naturalistic consciousness is not degrading unless you make it so, and the fact that not all atheists hold said naturalistic consciousness to be a reductionist perspective. As for the quip about being special, I'm unique. Through countless naturalistic variables adding up in the realm of chaos theory and the butterfly effect, I am one. There will never be one exactly like me. Even in the next second, I will be entirely different. Now, I don't know how you're using the term special, as you seem to be applying it in some vague buzzword sort of sense, but I am unique.
And the thing is, we can't complain about injustice, we can't complain about fear, we can't complain about burglary, we can't complain about murder if no one is special, if everyone is just a body. So there's no you. So if you remove theism, if you remove God, guess what? No one is special, you are just a bunch of biology, chemistry, and physics.
Putting aside the fact that everyone is unique and pretending that we're all the exact same person with the same thoughts and the same emotions, why can't I or anyone else complain? I ask rhetorically because I know for a fact I can, and that there is nothing contradictory about that act. You've merely asserted such without giving an actual reason. I would argue that I have more reason to complain than you, because I'm not on some spiritual opiate. I don't believe I'll be going to some mystical North Korea at the end of my life, and for some reason consider that fact to be a rather desirable one. I believe the only justice in this world is the justice we as people work towards. Now, as a humanist, I seek to base that justice in the ethical understanding of the situation to make the best informed ruling possible. And to do that, we as a species have created various legal systems to try and achieve that effect. There are the completely deity-free foundations for what you say and Andy says are impossible. Thus, we may conclude that you are talking absolute bollocks.
Second thing when it comes to atheism is that you believe that there's no freedom. There's no free will.
In a world that's governed by physics, the laws of physics, there is no room for free will. Everything is determined.
If everything is based on biology, chemistry, and physics, guess what? Every decision you've made in this life has been predetermined. Choosing your wife, choosing your work, how much money you're going to make, you didn't choose that at all. All of that has been predetermined by chemistry, biology, and physics. So there's no free will.
Meanwhile, if you're a Christian who believes in an all-knowing, all-powerful God that had control over every single variable and knew exactly how every single edit at the start of the universe would play out in their divine plan, including people's so-called choices, and thus had control over each and every single one of said choices, that gives you so much more free will, doesn't it? It's called divine predestination and is an intrinsic result of an all-knowing, all-powerful deity. And that's without acknowledging the fact that the Bible specifically mentions places where God stole the free will from the Pharaoh of Egypt so that he could supposedly torture an entire nation of people as an example of his power. This is seen in such quotes as those in Exodus chapter 14 verses 3 through 4, which reads, and I do quote, "Pharaoh will think, the Israelites are lost, they're confused. The wilderness has closed in on them. Then I'll make Pharaoh's heart stubborn again, and he'll chase after them. And I'll use the Pharaoh and his army to put my glory on display. Then the Egyptians will realize that I am God." End quote. This is one of many such quotes. Meanwhile, I'm part of a physical system, so what? I'm also a physical entity and thus have a measurable impact, unlike your apparent God, and that's completely fine by me. It doesn't bother me in the slightest to what we call our sense of will, because it doesn't change anything. Names don't have an impact on said will, and certainly doesn't call for any sort of deity to fix things.
Stephen Hawking, in his book Black Holes and Baby Universes, also an atheist, wrote this. He said, "I have noticed that even people who claim that everything is predestined and that we can do nothing to change it, look before they cross the road." So in atheism, this is a worrying conclusion. This is a worrying belief system. Whether it's right or wrong, that's not our argument, okay? Atheism, it means that, guess what? You have no free will. Everything has been predetermined.
Again, Returning to the fact that there are spiritual atheists that subscribe to non-theistic religions and even naturalistic attempts to explain our sense of will beyond that of pure determinism, this is completely false. Being an atheist does not mean one must reject free will, only that they reject the existence of God based on the claims you and other theists have made for said God's existence. That's all.
Third thing when it comes to atheism is that in atheism, there is no value.
Third one is that this is the most disturbing one to me, is the illusion of value. There is no room for value.
I mean, all of us grow up that there's financial value, personal value, there's value in working hard, but in atheism, if everything is just purely biology, chemistry, and physics, you have no value. There is no value in anything. The problem with this is when it comes to the justice system, this is a massive concern. Because if there is no value, guess what? Just is just what we want it to be. It means that anyone can say that their justice is supreme. It means there's no right, that there's no wrong. Justice is completely subjective. There's no actual value. There's only prescribed value. What I think what needs value, and my value can be different from your value. And my justice is different from your justice. And my right is different from your right. So in the justice system, if you're an atheist, you can't actually, you have no value, you claim that there is no value. And when it comes to the justice system, guess what? We can't say if someone steals your car, if someone breaks into your home, if someone kills someone that you love. Can't say it's right, can't say it's wrong, because it might be wrong to you, but for the other person it might be right. Worrying conclusion.
Meanwhile, the best legal systems in the world are secular, i.e. completely removed of any religious influence, particularly the religious influence of the monotheistic Abrahamic religions, i.e. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Christianity in particular justifies the atrocities of genocide, mass rape and slavery throughout the Bible, both in the Old and New Testament. And whilst I can question the Bible's allowance and even command of these things, if you are at least sincere about your belief that the Bible is God's chosen form of communication and God's will is moral, you don't have that privilege. And this reveals a greater issue inherent in your argument. The addition of God does not resolve the moral problem any more than the addition of any dictator throughout history. All you've done is taken power over right and wrong from the many and handed it to the one at the top. Morality is just God's opinion, which doesn't improve its value. Your ideology on morality is identical to every single dictatorship out there, and is why your religion has such a bloody history. In no small part due to colonialism, in which Christianity was not only used as justification for dominating indigenous people and erasing their identities, cultures, and languages to bring them to the good book, but slavery. That's why sermons like the religious instruction of the Negroes were given on controlling slaves via the usage of the Bible and its many horrendous principles. Surely, as someone whose very existence as a South African is built on this blood-stained inheritance, must have some understanding of that fact. I don't care what you call my morality. Subjective, objective, universal, not universal. Names mean nothing to me. All that matters is what my morality says, and it says that genocide, mass rape along with all forms of rape, and slavery are vile atrocities. Just like that, I said what your God and their Bible seemed incapable or unwilling to say. The Bible is an instruction manual on how to strip human beings of their value, right down to the idea of sin. I mean, you used murder as the example whilst ignoring God murdering people in the Bible. So a lot of this argument appears to be projection on your part.
So, God. Do we need God? Is God important? This wasn't an argument for God. This wasn't an argument against God. This is purely saying that if you're an atheist, if you are believing, if you are thinking of stepping away from God, you are automatically stepping into something else. And if you are thinking of becoming an atheist, guess what? These are some of the worrying conclusions that you need to consider before you become an atheist.
Actually, it's just further evidence that all apologists should bite their tongues when it comes to talking about being an atheist on any sort of level, as all that ever seems to happen when they do talk about it is they end up resorting to bold-faced lies. Nothing you have stated throughout this entire video has been either A, original, or B, truthful. None of the positions you assert an atheist must have on virtue of being an atheist were accurate. But more damningly, those aspects that I hold to personally as a humanist who happens to be an atheist, and my humanism, not my atheism, my humanism gives me said principles, well, your analysis simply boils down to a load of conjecture passed off as divine truth. You assert, but you don't demonstrate. You've made a point, but sure enough, you're found in want of any argument. And supporting evidence? Yeah, you're never going to present that, are you? Until you resolve these issues, you will fail to effectively discuss atheists in any conversation of value. That's just the reality of it. Hi there. I'd just like to say a few things here at the end of the video before you go. First, I'd like to thank everyone who has ever donated to the channel via Patreon, giving a special thanks to the following people: Andrew Spreitzer, Pavan Saw, Sean Conley, Alexander Williams, Daniel Martinez, and of course, Matthew Kovac. Your support has ensured this channel its ability to grow over the years, and hopefully for the years to come. I'd also like to ask that you comment down below and like this video, as well as subscribe to the channel and follow Essence Support on Facebook. Please also consider following Atheist Alliance International on Facebook, a humanist organisation dedicated to helping atheists all around the globe. Last of all, I'd like to request that you treat the people responded to in this video with a reasonable degree of respect. And whilst we completely understand that there are justifiable limits to said respect when tackling certain heavy topics, and anger can be a very genuine emotion in fighting injustice, any comments, and I repeat, any comments at all, utilising language which insults others on the basis of perceived gender, sexuality, ethnicity, or ability, both mental and physical, will be removed immediately, and the commenter may be blocked on the moderator's discretion. For those noted, let's create a humanist space which is welcoming to all. Thank you for watching.